A Valentine's Day to remember, for all the wrong reasons. While many are lost in a blissful haze of chocolates and roses, some face a far more sinister side to this holiday. Tonight we delve into the dark heart of Valentine's Day, exploring 3 true stories that will chill you to the bone. Stories that prove love can be a dangerous game, and sometimes the most terrifying monsters hide behind the mask of affection. So, dim the lights, lock your doors, and grab someone you trust. The air was thick with the scent of roses and expectation, a heady mix that seemed to cling to the night. Sarah, a young woman with eyes that sparkled like the heart-shaped pendant around her neck, hurried through the crowded streets, a nervous flutter in her stomach. She felt the weight of the city pressing in on her. It was Valentine's Day, and she was meeting her boyfriend Mark for a romantic dinner. The thought of seeing him brought a small smile to her lips. As she navigated the throngs of people, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was as if unseen eyes were following her every move. A shiver ran down her spine, and she instinctively clutched her purse tighter, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The city lights seemed to blur around her. Glancing over her shoulder, she saw nothing but smiling couples and eager shoppers. The normalcy of it all did little to calm her nerves. Dismissing her unease as pre-date jitters, Sarah continued on her way, the promise of a candlelit dinner and Mark's warm smile pushing away the lingering sense of dread. She quickened her pace, eager to reach the safety of the restaurant. She reached the restaurant, her favorite Italian bistro, and was greeted by the warm glow of fairy lights and the tantalizing aroma of garlic bread. The familiar setting brought a sense of comfort. Spotting Mark at a table by the window, a wave of relief washed over her. His presence was a beacon of safety in the bustling city. He stood as she approached, his face breaking into a smile that never failed to make her heart skip a beat. His eyes twinkled with affection. "You look beautiful," he breathed, pulling out her chair with a flourish. His words were a soothing balm to her frayed nerves. The dinner was everything Sarah had hoped for: delicious food, sparkling conversation, and the comfortable silence of 2 people who knew each other inside and out. It was a perfect evening. But as the evening progressed, the unsettling feeling of being watched returned, stronger than before. It gnawed at her, refusing to be ignored. Each time Sarah glanced towards the entrance, she imagined a shadowy figure lurking just out of sight, their eyes burning into her back. The feeling was almost palpable. She tried to focus on Mark, on his jokes and the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. But the feeling of unseen eyes lingered, a chilling presence she couldn't escape. It was as if the shadows themselves were watching her. Leaving the restaurant hand in hand with Mark, Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being followed. The night seemed to close in around them. Every shadow seemed to twist into a menacing shape, every passing car a potential threat. The city that once felt familiar now seemed alien and threatening. She clung to Mark's arm, her earlier fear escalating into full-blown panic. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. "What's wrong?" Mark asked, his brow furrowed with concern. His voice was a lifeline in the growing darkness. Sarah, her breath catching in her throat, tried to explain her fear, the way she felt hunted, but the words wouldn't come out. Her voice was trapped by the terror she felt. Suddenly Mark stopped, his grip on her hand tightening. His eyes scanned the surroundings with a newfound intensity. "Stay here," he whispered, his voice low and urgent. The seriousness in his tone sent a fresh wave of fear through her. He turned, his gaze scanning the darkened street behind them. The night seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The old theater stood on a hill overlooking the town, a grand dame of a building with a history as colorful as the stained glass windows that adorned its facade. The theater had seen countless performances, each adding to its rich tapestry of stories. Emily and Ben, their fingers intertwined, approached with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The evening air was crisp, adding a sense of anticipation to their steps. It was Valentine's Day, and Ben had surprised Emily with tickets to see a classic romantic comedy at the town's historic theater. The gesture was sweet, and Emily's heart swelled with affection. Built in the 1920s, the theater had a reputation for being haunted, with tales of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena circulating for decades. A fact that Ben had conveniently forgotten to mention when planning their date. He figured it would add a bit of thrill to their evening. "It's beautiful," Emily breathed, her gaze sweeping over the ornate facade, the intricate details of the architecture capturing her imagination, the faded grandeur only adding to its charm. It was like stepping back in time, to an era of elegance and sophistication. "Don't you think it's a little creepy though?" she added, a playful shiver running down her spine. The stories of hauntings were hard to ignore in such an atmosphere. Ben chuckled, pulling her closer. He loved how easily she got spooked, finding it endearing. "Don't worry, I'll protect you from the ghosts." His voice was reassuring, though he couldn't help but feel a slight unease himself. The air inside was cool and musty, thick with the scent of dust and forgotten dreams. It was as if the theater itself was a living entity, breathing in the memories of the past. A solitary figure sat in the ticket booth, his face obscured by shadows. The dim lighting added to the eerie ambiance. He looked up as they approached, his eyes glinting in the dim light. There was something unsettling about his gaze. "2 for the show," Ben said, handing over the tickets. His voice echoed slightly in the empty lobby. The old man stared at the tickets, then back at them, a strange expression flitting across his face. It was as if he knew something they didn't. "Enjoy the show," he rasped, his voice a dry whisper. The words sent a chill down Emily's spine, but be warned, some love stories never end. His warning hung in the air, adding to the sense of foreboding. He gestured towards the darkened auditorium, his long bony finger resembling a skeletal claw. The gesture was almost theatrical in its creepiness. Emily and Ben exchanged a nervous glance. The old man's words had clearly unsettled them both. The old man's words, delivered with such chilling conviction, hung in the air between them. It was hard to shake off the feeling of unease. Shaking off the unsettling encounter, they entered the theater, their laughter echoing in the vast emptiness. They tried to focus on the fun of the evening. The auditorium was eerily deserted. It felt like they had stepped into another world. Dust motes danced in the beams of light that streamed through the gaps in the heavy velvet curtains. The scene was almost magical, yet haunting. Emily felt a chill run down her spine as they made their way down the creaking aisle, their footsteps the only sound in the oppressive silence. Each step seemed to echo louder than the last. They found their seats, plush velvet chairs that creaked ominously as they settled in. The seats seemed to groan under their weight. As the lights dimmed and the velvet curtains groaned open, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. The sense of being watched was overwhelming. The play began, the actors' voices echoing strangely in the empty theater. The acoustics added an otherworldly quality to their performance. But Emily found it impossible to focus on the witty banter and romantic entanglements unfolding on stage. Her mind kept drifting back to the old man's warning. A presence, cold and unseen, seemed to press against her, whispering in her ear, a chilling caress against her skin. It was as if the theater itself was alive. She felt her heart pound against her ribs, her breath catching in her throat. The sensation was almost suffocating. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed movement in the shadows of the balcony above. It was subtle, but unmistakable. A figure, translucent and shimmering, stood there, its form shifting and changing like smoke on a breeze. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying. It was a woman, her dress a tattered remnant of a bygone era, her face pale and drawn, her eyes filled with an unspeakable sadness. She seemed to be searching for something or someone. Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. The sight was too much to bear. Ben, sensing her distress, turned to her, his brow furrowed with concern. He had never seen her so frightened. "What is it?" he whispered, his voice barely audible above the actor's dialogue. His concern was palpable. Emily, her voice trembling, pointed towards the balcony. She could barely get the words out. "There," she whispered back, her eyes wide with terror. The fear in her voice was unmistakable. Chapter 3. The Disappearing Lover. The aroma of lilies and lavender filled the air, a stark contrast to the icy dread that had settled over Daniel's heart. The scent was a cruel reminder of happier times, now overshadowed by an unending sense of loss. Valentine's Day, once a celebration of love and joy, had been twisted into a cruel reminder of his loss, a day etched in his memory with chilling clarity. The decorations, now faded, seemed to mock his sorrow. It had been exactly 1 year since his fiancée Lily had vanished without a trace. The date loomed over him like a dark cloud, impossible to ignore. 1 minute she was there, radiant in a red dress, her laughter echoing through their apartment as she arranged a bouquet of roses. Her presence had filled the room with warmth and light. The next, she was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of her perfume and a chilling void in Daniel's life. The emptiness was palpable, a constant reminder of her absence. The police had investigated, of course, but their efforts had yielded nothing but dead ends and unanswered questions. Each lead had evaporated like mist, leaving Daniel more desperate than before. Lily, it seemed, had simply vanished into thin air. The city, once bustling with life, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and echoes. Daniel, however, refused to believe that she was gone. His determination was unwavering, fueled by love and an unyielding hope. He clung to the hope that she was still out there, somewhere, waiting to be found. His search became an obsession, a quest that consumed his every waking moment. He retraced their steps, revisiting their favorite haunts, desperate for any sign, any clue that could lead him back to her. Each familiar place brought a mix of hope and heartache. He distributed flyers, her smiling face staring back at him, a painful reminder of all he had lost. The flyers became a symbol of his relentless search, but his efforts were met with silence, a silence that screamed louder than any confession. The void seemed to swallow his cries, leaving him feeling more isolated than ever. On this, the one-year anniversary of her disappearance, Daniel found himself drawn back to the last place he had seen Lily, their apartment. The door creaked open, revealing a space frozen in time. It remained untouched, a shrine to their love, frozen in time. Dust particles danced in the dim light, adding to the eerie stillness. The roses he had given her that day, now withered and brown, stood on the coffee table. Their once vibrant petals curled inwards like claws. They were a stark contrast to the life they once symbolized. He picked up a framed photograph, their smiling faces staring back at him. The image was a bittersweet reminder of the happiness they had shared. Lily, her eyes sparkling with love and happiness, seemed to mock him with her absence. The photograph was a cruel reminder of what he had lost. A single tear escaped, tracing a path down his cheek, a testament to his unending grief. The pain was as fresh as the day she disappeared. As he stood there, lost in his memories, a faint scratching sound reached his ears. It was an unusual noise, one that he had never heard before. It seemed to be coming from behind the fireplace, a place they rarely used. The sound was persistent, growing louder with each passing second. He cautiously approached, his heart pounding in his chest. Each step felt like an eternity, the fear mounting with every movement. The scratching grew louder, more insistent, accompanied by a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down his spine. The sound was unlike anything he had ever heard. Fear, cold and paralyzing, gripped him. He felt rooted to the spot, unable to move or think clearly. He had always dismissed the stories, the whispers of the supernatural, as nothing more than folklore. But now, those tales seemed all too real. But now, faced with the unknown, he felt a primal fear course through his veins. It was a fear that defied logic, rooted in the deepest parts of his psyche. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed the poker from beside the fireplace and slowly, cautiously, pried open the small metal door that concealed a storage space behind the bricks. The door creaked open, revealing the darkness within. Love can be a powerful force, driving us to acts of great passion and devotion. But as we've seen tonight, it can also be a double-edged sword, capable of inflicting unimaginable pain and terror. These stories serve as a chilling reminder that even in the realm of love, darkness can lurk, waiting to claim unsuspecting hearts. So, as you celebrate Valentine's Day, remember that not all love stories have a happy ending. Be mindful of your surroundings, trust your instincts, and never underestimate the potential darkness that can reside within the human heart. Stay safe this Valentine's Day, and always be aware of your surroundings.